Out in the wilderness, far from traffic, streetlights, and the comfort of human voices, there are places where silence feels wrong, where the forest watches, where something old walks without leaving footprints. Tonight, you'll hear 3 real camping stories from people who stepped off the trail and never truly came back the same. I want to tell you a story that happened to me last fall in Alder Creek National Park. It's a place known for its massive pine forests, deep silence, and almost zero cell service, which was exactly what I was looking for: a quiet weekend away from everything. A tent, a campfire, and a night under the stars. At least, that's what I expected. I arrived at the park around evening. There was a large map at the entrance, and I studied it carefully to pick a trail that supposedly led to a lake. About a mile in, I noticed a narrow side path splitting off from the main trail. It wasn't on the map, but it looked used: fresh footprints, flattened grass, branches pushed aside. Something about it pulled me in. As I followed it, the forest grew quieter. The air felt heavier. Little things didn't make sense. Branches laid neatly along the sides of the path, stumps cut too precisely, not like by a saw, but like something perfectly sharp sliced through, and small gusts of wind that seemed to blow in the opposite direction of my movement. By the time the sun started disappearing, I knew I had to stop and set up camp. The path led me to a small clearing. It looked like the perfect place to sleep. But later, I would learn that this clearing shouldn't have been there at all. My fire had burned down, and I was lying inside the tent, listening to the sounds of the forest. Suddenly, I heard footsteps, not loud, but close, maybe 10 meters away. I sat up, holding my breath. Another step, soft, off balance, almost confused, like whoever or whatever was walking didn't fully understand how to use their legs. I unzipped the tent just a little and peeked out. Nothing, just the last glow of the dying fire. I zipped the tent closed again, turned to my side, and froze. Right next to me, no more than a meter outside the thin tent wall, a whisper said, "This way." It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, but it was unmistakably human, and I was completely alone out there. Morning felt normal. Daylight makes everything seem less threatening. I packed up my tent and started walking back toward what I thought was the trail. Except the trail wasn't there. Where a clear path had been last night, there were now bushes and undergrowth, dense, untouched, like no one had walked here for decades. The clearing where I had camped, also gone, no trace of it ever existing. That's when I saw it, a dark figure between the trees. Not moving, not breathing, just standing, perfectly still. Too tall for a person, too straight for an animal. And when I tried to focus my eyes on it, the figure slid behind a tree. Not walked, not ran, slid. My stomach dropped. I started walking faster, choosing a direction that felt like out. The forest grew darker, even though the sun was high. Every instinct told me I wasn't alone. Then I heard it. A scream. A human scream. But something was wrong with it, like someone trying to imitate the idea of a scream without understanding how emotions work. Flat. Mechanical. Loud, but empty. I started running. The scream followed, first behind me, then to my left, then suddenly, ahead of me, like whatever was making the sound was moving impossibly fast. Just when my legs were about to give out, I saw sunlight, a break in the trees, an asphalt road, the parking lot, my car. I stumbled out of the woods and looked back. The forest was calm, peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Back in the car, I opened the map again. The trail I was supposed to take was miles away from where I ended up, and the place where I camped. According to the map, that area was solid forest, no clearings, no paths. A week later, I returned with a friend to try to find that trail again. We searched for hours, nothing, except for one detail that made my blood run cold. On a tree near where I remembered the side trail splitting off, someone had carved a perfect, razor-straight mark into the bark, too straight for a knife, too even for an axe, and under it, a symbol resembling an upside-down letter P. The exact same symbol I had seen carved into one of the stumps along that mysterious trail. I never believed the stories about Ridge Point. Locals said the ridge was haunted, not by ghosts, but by something older, something that watches travelers from the tree line. I had camped alone dozens of times before. I wasn't easily scared, but what happened over those 2 nights changed the way I look at the forest forever. Ridge Point was beautiful, tall pines, massive stones covered in moss, and cliffs overlooking miles of untouched forest. The trail was narrow and climbed steadily upward. Every once in a while, I felt something odd, like the forest grew quiet too quickly when I approached. A few times I stopped because I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but each time the trail was empty, just silence. Heavy, unnatural silence. Eventually, I reached the ridge and chose a flat patch between 2 boulders to set up my tent. Right as I finished, a strange feeling hit me, like someone was standing at the tree line, watching. I scanned the woods, nothing, no movement, but the feeling didn't leave. Night came fast on the ridge. The moon barely pierced through the mist. I sat near the fire, listening to distant wind pushing through the branches. Then I heard it, not footsteps, not animals. A slow, heavy exhale from the woods behind my tent. It sounded almost human. I stood up, shining my flashlight into the trees. Nothing moved, not even branches. That was the first sign something was wrong. There was no wind, not anymore. The exhale came again, this time closer. I stepped backward, my beam sweeping across the trees, and for half a second, I saw it. A tall, dark silhouette, standing between 2 pines, perfectly still, too tall to be a person, too narrow to be an animal. When the light hit it, it didn't move. It just shifted slightly, like a vertical shadow, sliding between trunks. I blinked, it was gone, and then, silence again. The next morning, I stepped out of my tent and froze. Around my campsite, someone, or something, had placed small stones in a perfect circle. Each stone was the same size, each positioned exactly the same distance from the next. The circle was too precise to be random. I hadn't heard a thing all night. I kicked one of the stones away, suddenly angry. It rolled into the trees. And that's when I heard something I still can't explain. A whispered voice from the forest. Don't. Soft, pleading, almost sad. I spun around, but again, the woods were empty. I should have packed up and left, but part of me wanted to believe there was a rational explanation. That night, the fog was so thick I could barely see my own tent from the fire pit. Every sound was muffled, as if the forest was wrapped in cloth. Then came the clicking, soft at first, like 2 stones tapping together. Click, 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 from several points around my camp. The tapping shifted positions quickly, like whatever was making it was circling me. Then all tapping stopped at once. I turned slowly toward the tree line, and the fog parted just enough for me to see a shape. Not a person, not an animal, something tall and thin, limbs too long, standing at an unnatural angle. almost leaning like a tree that shouldn't be able to stand. Its head tilted slowly, as if studying me. Then its arm, impossibly long, moved upward, pointing behind me. I spun around, nothing. When I turned back, the shape was gone. I didn't sleep. At the first sign of dawn, I packed everything as fast as I could and ran down the trail. But halfway down the ridge, I stopped dead. Fresh footprints covered the ground. Not human, not animal. Long, narrow impressions, almost like something walked on the tips of its feet. They followed the trail behind me, dozens of them. The last set of prints stopped abruptly, as if the creature suddenly stepped off the path and vanished into the air. I didn't care anymore. I ran, all the way to the bottom, to the parking lot. When I finally looked back at the ridge, the fog was rolling down the rocks like something alive, and for a moment, I swear, I saw a tall shape standing at the top, watching. A week later, I searched online for stories about Ridgepoint. Buried deep in a forum, I found something that made my stomach twist. A 1983 ranger report describing a missing hiker. The report mentioned long footprints circling the camp, arranged stones, and a tall figure seen watching from the ridge. At the bottom, the ranger added a handwritten note. It watches, it learns, it follows those who see it. I closed my laptop, and for the first time since that trip, I felt like something was standing behind me. I thought I knew this forest well. My friends and I camped here every year, same trail, same lake, same safe routine, but this time, we wanted to go further. 2 hours deeper into the woods, toward a place marked on the old map as Old Creek Cabin. We'd never heard of it, and when the ranger handed us our permit, he simply said, "Don't camp near that cabin. The place is older than the park." We laughed it off. 24 hours later, none of us were laughing anymore. We reached the cabin near sunset. It was small, crooked, half swallowed by moss and vines. The windows had no glass. The door was hanging on a single, rusted hinge. The forest around it was too quiet. We set up our tents near the creek instead, but while we prepared camp, I felt observed, not stalked, not threatened, just watched. That night, as we sat by the fire, the silence grew heavy, unnaturally heavy. No insects, no wind, no water sounds from the creek. And then we heard it, a single knock on the cabin door. Just one, sharp, precise. We froze. The knock came again, twice this time, but when we pointed our flashlights at the cabin, no one was there. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to someone tapping on the outside of my tent. Soft, at first, tap, tap, then a long, dragging sound, like a palm sliding across the fabric. I listened. Both of my friends were sleeping. I could hear their breathing. Another tap, this time from the side facing the cabin. I slowly unzipped the tent and peeked out. A man was standing at the cabin door, tall, motionless. But what made my blood run cold wasn't him, it was the door. The cabin door moved by itself, just a slow, gentle tapping, as if someone inside was knocking, trying to get out. The man stood there, watching us. In the morning, we finally gathered the courage to check the cabin. The door resisted, as if someone had held it shut all night. Inside, the smell of rot and metal hit us instantly. The walls were covered with drawings, crude charcoal symbols, circles, and human figures standing in front of the cabin. One figure was marked in red charcoal. Under it, someone had written a time, 3:17. On the floor, we saw footprints, bare, human footprints. Most were old, smudged by dust and rain, but some were fresh, damp, leading straight to the doorway. the same direction where I had seen the silhouette stand during the night. We couldn't sleep the second night. Every sound felt wrong. Around 3 a.m., I heard water shifting, slow footsteps in the creek, splash, splash, splash. We pointed our flashlights toward the creek. Nothing, but the water kept moving. Then one of my friends whispered, "He's not in the water, he's under it." At that moment, the surface bubbled, as if something was crawling just beneath. A pale hand broke through the water, gripping a rock. Not emerging, just holding, like it was pulling itself closer. I screamed. When we turned to run, I caught a glimpse of the cabin window reflection. A tall, dark figure standing right behind us. We didn't pack, we didn't speak, we just ran. By sunrise, we reached the parking lot, and then we saw it. A long, muddy handprint smeared down the hood of my car, like someone had stood in front of it, watching, waiting. We sped away, but when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the forest wasn't still. It seemed to pulse, as if something inside it moved with us. At the trail entrance, a figure stood, motionless, the same one from the cabin, just watching us leave, and smiling. A few weeks later, I returned alone, just to prove to myself it wasn't real. But the cabin was gone, not collapsed, not burned, not damaged, gone, as if it had never existed. The ground where it stood was clean, untouched. But on a nearby tree, I found something carved deep into the bark. 317. I knock for those who answer.
A Duskveil production.
If you enjoy this story, stay with us. There are more nights and more voices waiting to be heard. Subscribe to Duskveil.